you've been following the nuclear crisis in Japan, you've probably heard a good deal about spent fuel rods and how they figure into the threat of radiation exposure. Our Mary Snow has been looking into how those fuel rods work in Japan and here in the United States. So what are you finding out, Mary?
Well, Wolf, one thing that the United States and Japan have in common is that there is no long-term storage facility for used nuclear fuel. Those spent fuel rods you just mentioned, they're stored at power plants. A look at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, where a big threat comes from the pools storing used nuclear fuel. They keep spent fuel rods cool, but because the water has either leaked or boiled off, utility crews and soldiers have been spraying water in a frantic effort to replenish those pools. If those spent fuel rods are not kept cool, they are partially melt or burnt, sending radiation into the air. This photo shows a gaping hole at reactor 4. The pools are used in Japan because it stores used fuel at its plants. So does the United States. David Diamond is a nuclear engineer with the Department of Energy's Brookhaven National Lab. He says those spent fuel rods need to be constantly cooled for months at a time.
Eventually, the heat in the rods subsides to the point that they can be taken out of the pool and put into a dry cask. In other words, they don't need cooling anymore, but you still need them in a structure that keeps the radiation from getting out into the environment.
Here in the U.S., this is a spent fuel pool at the Dresden Nuclear Power Plant in Illinois, where CNN's Brian Todd visited last year.
In fact, where we're standing right now is very safe for walking around, for working in, whatever we need to do.
But because its pools are full, Dresden says it's putting fuel into these dry casks. It advocates a site to permanently store nuclear waste. That was intended to happen at Yucca Mountain in Nevada, but the controversy surrounding it has blocked it from becoming a storage site. So plants rely on these storage pools. John Lehner is a scientist at Brookhaven.
Normally, because this is such a passive system, you wouldn't expect much to happen here. But of course, if you're looking at something like a terrorist attack, then you would want to have some extra measures.
Lehner says after 9/11, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission told utilities they must have an emergency backup plan of getting water into those pools to keep them full. And while one of the similarities between the U.S. and Japan are the emergency power systems to plants. If there is a power failure in the U.S., emergency diesel generators will kick in, and if they don't operate, there are batteries that can provide power for 4 to 8 hours. And that's essentially the same backup plan at the Fukushima plant in Japan.